And welcome to this Careers and Enterprise Hub hosted workshop, which today is facilitated by Grace from GIST, and will be on the topic of professionalism in the online workplace and virtual branding. Over to you, Grace. Thank you.
Hi everyone, hope you're well and keeping safe. If you can, if appropriate at all, please do pop cameras on. It's always good to see faces behind names, but no pressure at all. So who am I? I work for GIST. We are a logistics and supply chain company, and what I do is I look after the early talent acquisition space. So that means the recruitment of grads, apprenticeships, placement students, and soon to be management degree students. So it's quite a busy place. We definitely have adapted the way that we work in the past 10 months that this pandemic has flooded us, but we're adapting to that. And one thing that I'm passionate about and feel that I have a duty of care of is passing on the message of the online branding and the online workspace. Employability does not end online, because it's different. We just learn how to change that. Some people are adapting to that. Some people are learning how to adapt to that. I'm still learning day in, day out, things to do, things not to do, and things that help me to put my best foot forward. So that's basically what I'm here to do today. So I've got a few points. I do want this to be more conversational. So any questions, don't hesitate to pop your hand up or drop it in the text box, and I'll be happy to answer that. I hope you do feel comfortable enough to ask me questions. Honestly, I love to talk, so whatever it is you want to ask me, I'm here to answer that. So we're just going to kick off with some things that I, as an assessor, that is really important in the online space and when doing online assessment. So I'm not too sure of the range in the room at the moment, but I'm going to assume that you're either applying for placements or you are currently applying for grad schemes. If that's completely wrong, just let me know and I'll sort of tailor it to the correct crowd. But first things first, that I would say in the online space, and it seems like everyone knows it, but is to think about your surroundings and think, is this appropriate? Is this distracting? So on Microsoft Teams, we have the pleasure of being able to blur our backgrounds and things like that. Not all softwares have that. So it's important that you prepare your surroundings to be seen and to be appropriate. Of course, the onus is on the assessor, on myself, and other people that do this in terms of recruitment. The onus on us is to ensure that we are fully focused and we're fully concentrating, but sometimes it is quite distracting. So we've run a session before and we've had someone have a shoe hanging in the background, and the shoe was just so interesting. I was completely mesmerized that sometimes I derailed from what was said. So it can be distracting. I mean, one of the myths that I'm here to shatter, and one of the myths that I'm here to completely break, is that recruitment is done by an AI system. That is not correct. We are people, and we do get distracted and things like that, but it's not an AI system behind it. It's not a robot behind it. It is a person behind it. Again, dress to impress. The same way that you would when you were if you were to go to a face-to-face interview, it is important to dress that way, at least on your top half. I think for performance sake, I definitely perform much better when I'm dressed and I'm ready for the day, as opposed to still in my pajamas or just in comfy clothes. I definitely find that my performance is a lot better when I'm dressed to go. Another thing that I'd recommend in the online space is to sit up straight. Make sure you're looking directly at the camera when you're engaging. I mean, we've been on Zoom for what, 10 months now? About 10, 11 months now. And I still catch myself looking at myself in the camera, which I'm doing today, rather than looking at the camera. So it's very important to make sure that you are engaging with the person that you are speaking to. So something that's very important in assessing in person is body language. So a lot of assessors tend to look at how you're sat, if you're slouching, if you seem distracted, or anything like that. However, in the online space, that is doubled. So it's doubled in the sense of it's important that you are sat up straight. So anything like a simple slouch, it looks a lot more exaggerated than it would in person. So please make sure you bear that in mind. Unfortunately, or fortunately for you all, I don't have a clicky pen at the moment, but one thing that I say is to avoid them. Because every sound that you make in your room is echoed onto the camera, regardless of if you're working with an extended microphone or if you're working with a laptop. So, for example, I'm going to do this to prove a point. But when you get nervous, it's very possible that you'll start tapping your your pen, or you'll start clicking your pen, and that noise gets picked up on your camera. So please avoid doing that, avoid the fidgeting and things like that. Again, please speak clearly, speak confidently. So in an online assessment, at least for us here at GIST, you would have gone through a application, you would have gone for an online application. So that shows that we like you as a candidate, we like the look of your CV, we like your application answers, we can see that you're studying the correct degree, or you're working hard towards getting the appropriate grades. So it's very important that you bring some character to your online assessment. So please be confident in yourself. You've come this far. One thing that I always say is that assessment centres and online assessments, they're not there to trick you. They're not there to create hurdles for you. They're not there to catch you out on something that you've said. I'd like people to start thinking of it more as something that's conversational. So it's a two-way thing. I'm seeing if you're the right candidate for us here at GIST, but you're also seeing, is GIST a place that I would like to work long term? It should never be a thing where you feel like you're proving yourself to a point where you've completely shattered your nerves and your confidence. Please be confident in yourself. That is very important. So when you're asked questions in an assessment, it's very important that you take the time to think. So a lot of the time, what tends to happen is we get asked a question, and all of a sudden we want to blurt absolutely everything that's in our mind. Your assessor understands, so especially for competency-based questions, your assessor understands that it's likely that you'll need to cast your mind back to memory, and that's okay. Just say to your assessor, I'm just going to need some time to think about that. Take the time to think and structure your answer. You'll be given some time to answer, so make sure that you use that. They might probe at times, that might ask you, oh, what do you mean by that, or how did you do that? Again, it's not to catch you out, it's just to get a bigger picture of the answer that you've given. Is something that I'd definitely say. So in a group setting, if you're doing, for example, a group exercise in an assessment centre, it's very important to remember it's not a game of dominance. It's not a game of dominance at all. It's not always the loud person that gets the role. It's not always the person that says the most that gets progressed. It's the person that has the most impact. And you can have impact in so many different ways. A tip that I'll give to you is that one thing that assessors tend to look out for is empathy. So there might be someone in the group that isn't as loud as you, that isn't as confident as you, that doesn't have as much to say as you, but just the simple, oh, Susanna, what did you think of that? Oh, Deborah, what did you think of that? Oh, Joanne, what did you think of that? Just including them into the conversation is a very thoughtful thing for you to do. So when we do online assessments, sometimes you do it on your laptop, sometimes people do it on iPads. I would advise that you keep you only keep the device that you're working on in the room. So if you're working on a laptop, perhaps put your phone downstairs, put your iPad downstairs. One thing that we hear a lot is maybe turn off your Alexa, maybe turn off your Google Home, because of course they do pick up things as you are speaking, and it will throw you off and it will distract you. Another tip that I'd give to you is, I'm sure a lot of you, if not all of you, have smartphones. We have the pleasure of having cameras on them. So what I would do is I would go onto a website and I would just look at generic interview questions, and I would record myself answering them, as uncomfortable as it can be. And what it's done is it's trained me to be able to see what my assessor is seeing. So I'm putting myself in someone else's shoes, so so I can see my positioning. Do I look like I'm interested? Am I sat up? Am am I interested in what I'm saying, in terms of my answers that I'm giving, is a good way to practice. And when I have presentations like these, or when I'm leading an assessment centre, that's something that I often will do. Just before we start, I'll just take 5 minutes before, just have a look at what my assessor is going to see in the frame of that, camera. So that's very, very, very important. Another thing that I'd like to encourage students to do when doing online assessments is to remember that, you know, you're there as a candidate. Sometimes because in person, often you'll have that time where, you know, you'll chat to someone, you'll get to know them. You lose that with virtual assessment centres, especially when there is no holding room. So one thing that we try to do at GIST is have sort of a holding room where everyone's sat in between, getting put in and out of their rooms. So at that time, it's okay if you just want to have a chat with someone in the room, get to know another candidate, or if you want to pop the camera off, go and get a drink, but just don't feel like you have to reel your CV off whilst you're waiting. I promise you, you'll exhaust yourself, you'll get very tired, and we don't want that when you're doing your assessments. These things can last for ages. Still going on about the online space, and your online virtual branding, one thing that I've done recently is being more active on my LinkedIn, and that can be a number of ways. So if I do things, I'll pop it on there. If I learn things, I'll pop it on there, and it's just a way for me to build an online portfolio. You're more than welcome to follow me on LinkedIn if you'd like to, but one of the things that having an active LinkedIn does for me is it reminds me of projects that I've worked on that I might forget. So there's a chance on when you have your CV, you'll put your LinkedIn on there, and a recruiter, they might look at it, they might not look at it, but if they do look at it, what it does is it brings life to your CV. It shows what you've told me in your CV that you're passionate about this, and you've worked on all these projects in university. I then go to your LinkedIn and I see it, I see pictures of it, I see videos of it. It just shows me that you are actually passionate about what you're talking about. A phrase that I tend to use quite often is having a passion for your purpose. So a lot of people are graduating with amazing, phenomenal grades. A lot of people are getting experience, albeit virtual, albeit in person, but not a lot of people have passion for the roles that they're applying for. I understand it's time consuming. I understand that, you've applied for so many this week and you just want to get this in the door, you just want to get this done, but the applications that you just do for the sake of doing it, they don't tend to do well. It's the ones that you really sit down and you think, why do I want to do this role? Why am I interested? And you really put yourself you really put a passion to it, are the ones that you'll tend to do much better in. So really think about that too. Another thing that I'll say in terms of the online space is connect with people. Don't be afraid to connect with students. When I was a student, I was doing the exact same thing, and this was pre-pandemic. I was connecting with people. You'd be surprised how many people do things differently to you, and you learn something new each day, really. So don't be afraid to do that. In terms of presentation, that's all I have for you today. But if you have any questions, I did notice the chat box going off and making quite a few noises, but I'll have a look in there. Any questions at all, please don't hesitate to pop your hand up, and I'm happy to answer that.
Great, thank you so much. Grace, that was a really lovely insight and a reminder to some really important questions. That one about turning off the Alexa or the Google Home, I've definitely fallen foul of that one. When I worked in the same space as Google Home, and it was telling me the weather and all sorts, and in quite an important meeting with my boss. So
it catches you off. I've done it too.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to really pick up on with you and just kind of remind students is that thing that you were saying about looking in the camera when you're talking to the camera. It's something that we've really noticed a lot recently, and we've had a lot of feedback on, is that when you're looking at yourself in the camera, the temptation is to kind of either pout or check your hair or do whatever.
Adjust your shirt,
yeah. And when you're the interviewer or the other person in that business meeting, it can be really distracting, and it can come across as quite unprofessional as well. So really check yourself. When you're on a Zoom call with your friends, it might be totally fine for you to be pouting away, you know, checking your hair, make sure you're all good. But when it's on a professional meeting, check your hair before you start. Some people find it helpful to shut their own camera off so they can't see it. Other people find it even more disconcerting to not see themselves. We're living in this really strange world where we're suddenly faced with our own image in the middle of every meeting.
For a very long time.
Yeah, exactly, for a very long time. So I just wanted to pick up on those 2 points and just say they're absolutely fantastic points. I can see we've got questions in the chat, and we've got a hand up